Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Mr. Daily Speak English. I'm Emily, and I'm really happy to be here with you all today. It's always great to spend time together and learn English with you.
Hi, Emily, and hello to all our wonderful listeners. I'm David, and I'm excited about our topic today because it's something many people experience in real life, using English at work.
Exactly. Whether you're just starting your career or you've been working for many years, English plays an important role in many workplaces around the world.
In today's episode, we're going to talk about real situations where you may need to use English at work. For example, writing emails, understanding reports, and taking part in meetings.
That's right. But before we begin, if you enjoy this podcast and find it helpful, please subscribe to Mr. Daily Speak English. It really helps us create more useful lessons for you.
And don't forget to like this episode and leave your thoughts or questions in the comments. We always love hearing from you.
Okay, let's get started. One of the most common ways we use English at work is writing emails. David, what are some important things we should remember when writing professional emails in English?
That's a great question. When you're writing work emails in English, the most important things are clarity and simplicity. Your message should be easy to read and easy to understand.
Yes, and the tone should also be polite and professional. For example, instead of saying, "Send me the report," you can say, "Could you please send me the report when you have a moment?" Or, "I would really appreciate it if you could send me the report."
Exactly. Those phrases sound much more polite and respectful in a work environment.
So, what about the beginning of an email? What are some common and appropriate greetings?
If you know the person's name, you can start with something like, "Dear Sarah," or "Hello, Sarah." And if you're writing to a team or a group, you may write, "Dear team," or "Hello, everyone."
That's really helpful. And how about closing an email politely?
Common endings include "best regards," "sincerely," or "thank you," followed by your name. If you have a friendly work relationship, you can also simply write "best."
Great. Now, let's talk about the main part of the email. What should we keep in mind when writing the body of the message?
You should clearly state the purpose of your email right from the beginning. Say what information you're sharing or what you're requesting. Short paragraphs and bullet points make the email easier to read and more professional.
That's excellent advice. Nobody likes reading a long, confusing email. And what about attachments?
If you attach a file, always mention it in the email. For example, "Please find the attached report for your review." This helps the reader know there is a document included.
Perfect. So, for our listeners, when writing emails in English at work, remember to stay clear, polite, professional, and easy to understand.
Exactly. And always use appropriate greetings, closings, and don't forget to mention any attachments.
Great. Now, let's move on to another important part of work life, understanding reports. Reports often contain numbers, data, and sometimes difficult business vocabulary. What are some good strategies to understand them better in English?
That's a really good question. Yes, reports can sometimes feel difficult or even intimidating, especially if English is not your first language. One useful strategy is to first learn the most common business words used in your field or industry. There are many glossaries and resources online that can help with this.
That makes sense. And if something in the report is not clear, it's always okay to ask for clarification, right?
Absolutely. If a term, number, or sentence is confusing, it's much better to ask a colleague or supervisor than to make a wrong assumption. You might say, "Could you explain this part, please?" Or, "I'm not sure I fully understand this section."
Another helpful tip is to look for the summary or executive summary at the beginning of the report. It usually gives a clear overview of the main ideas and conclusions.
Yes, that's true. Also, pay close attention to charts, graphs, and tables. They often show information visually, which can make complex data easier to understand. Just remember to read the labels carefully.
And if someone needs to present information from a report, it can really help to practice explaining the key points in their own words.
Exactly. When you can explain something simply, it usually means you understand it well, and it also helps others understand you better.
Sometimes reports also include abbreviations or acronyms. What should our listeners do in that situation?
If you see a word or abbreviation you don't recognize, make a note of it and try to find out what it means, either from the report's glossary or by asking a colleague. Understanding the terminology is very important for making good decisions at work.
Okay, let's move on to another common situation at work: meetings. For many learners, speaking in meetings in a second language can feel quite challenging. What useful English phrases can people use to share their ideas or ask for clarification during meetings?
That's a very important topic. Meetings play a big role in teamwork and communication at work. When you want to express your opinion, you can start with phrases like, in my opinion, from my perspective, I think that. These phrases sound polite and professional.
And what about when you agree with someone? What are some natural phrases our listeners can use?
You could say, I agree. I agree with you. That's a great point. These phrases show clear and positive agreement.
Good. And if someone wants to disagree but still sound polite and respectful?
They might say, I see your point, but I have a slightly different view. I'm not sure I completely agree with that. This way, you share your opinion without sounding rude or confrontational.
Sometimes people may not fully understand something in a meeting. What can they say to ask for clarification?
They can use phrases like, could you please explain that again? Sorry, I didn't quite catch that. What do you mean by... These are very natural and absolutely okay to say in meetings.
Great. And what if someone wants to add to another person's point?
They could say, I'd like to add to that. Building on what said, this sounds confident and collaborative.
And sometimes it's necessary to interrupt, but politely. How can someone do that in English?
Some polite options are, excuse me, sorry to interrupt, but this allows you to join the discussion without sounding disrespectful.
That's great advice. And of course, the tone of the meeting matters too, whether it's more formal or informal.
Exactly. If you're leading a meeting, it helps to speak clearly, summarize key points, and make sure everyone understands the decisions made.
And for participants, active listening and taking notes can really help.
Yes, especially for non-native speakers. Taking notes helps you remember important information and action items.
Great. Now, let's talk about another common situation at work: daily stand-up meetings, also called dailies. These meetings are usually short, and team members quickly share their updates. What kind of English is normally used in these situations?
In daily stand-ups, the language is usually clear, short, and direct. People normally talk about three main things: what I did yesterday, what I'm working on today, and whether I have any blockers or problems.
Right. So for yesterday's tasks, people usually use the past simple tense, correct?
Exactly. For example, yesterday I finished the user interface design. Yesterday, I worked on fixing the login bug. This shows tasks that are already completed.
And when talking about today's plans, people often use present continuous or going to.
Yes, for example, today I'm planning to start working on the database integration. I'm going to focus on writing the documentation. These sentences sound natural and professional.
Now, what about blockers? How do people usually talk about problems that are stopping them from continuing their work?
They might say, I'm blocked because the API is not ready yet, or I'm waiting for feedback on the design before I can continue. The goal is to be brief and clear because daily stand-ups are meant to be short.
Exactly. No long explanations, just quick and useful updates.
Yes, and sometimes progress must also be reported in writing, for example, in a daily or weekly report. The language there is similar, but usually a little more formal.
So instead of simply writing fixed login bug, someone might write,
I successfully resolved the issue affecting the user login functionality. This sounds more professional and complete.
and when someone finishes a task, what is a good way to communicate that?
They might say, I've completed the feature, or the report document is now finished. And sometimes they also add the next step. For example, I've completed the first draft and sent it for review.
That's a very clear and professional way to communicate progress. Great. Now let's talk about one-on-one meetings with a boss or supervisor. These meetings are often used to discuss performance, goals, and challenges at work. What kind of English is useful in these situations?
One-on-one meetings usually require more thoughtful and detailed communication. When talking about your performance, you might say, I believe I've made good progress on the project. I've been focusing on improving my performance in this area. It's always helpful to give clear examples.
Right. Evidence makes your statements stronger, and if someone has achieved good results, they shouldn't be afraid to mention it.
Exactly. For example, I completed the project ahead of schedule. We were able to reduce costs on this task. These sentences sound confident, but still professional.
What about when someone is facing challenges at work?
Then they can say, I'm currently facing a challenge with this task. Here's the situation, and these are the steps I've taken so far. This shows responsibility and problem-solving attitude.
And it's also a good opportunity to ask for guidance or support, right?
Yes, absolutely. You might say, I would really appreciate your advice on this issue. Or, could you please guide me on the best way to handle this? This sounds respectful and professional.
These meetings are also a great time to talk about career goals.
That's true. You can say, I'd like to develop my skills in this area. Or, I'm interested in taking on more responsibility in the future. This helps your manager understand your ambitions and motivation.
And of course, it's important to listen carefully to feedback and ask clarifying questions if necessary.
Yes, and it's always a good idea to prepare before the meeting. Think about what you want to discuss and maybe write a few notes.
That makes communication clearer and helps you use English more confidently. Great. Now let's talk about another important side of work life, the social aspect. It's not only about emails, reports, and meetings. We also use English to connect with colleagues and build good relationships at work.
Exactly. Friendly conversations at work usually use more informal English. For example, during a coffee break, you might say, How's your morning going? Did you have a good weekend? These are simple, natural conversation starters.
And if someone wants to talk about their own weekend, they might say, I had a relaxing weekend. I went for a walk. Or, it was a busy weekend. I visited my family.
Yes. And if you're curious about your colleague's work, you might ask, How's that project you're working on going? Are you busy with your current task? This sounds friendly and professional.
And if you want to talk about your own work, you could say, I'm working on a challenging task at the moment. Or, I just finished a task. It feels great to have it done.
Exactly. And sometimes colleagues make plans after work. You might ask, Would you like to grab a coffee after work? Are you doing anything tonight? Or more casually, fancy going for pizza tonight?
And if you're inviting a group, you might say, Hey everyone, a few of us are going out for dinner tonight. Are you in?
And if someone wants to decline politely, they can say, Thanks for the invitation, but I already have plans. Or, That sounds great, but I won't be able to make it this time.
That keeps the conversation polite and respectful.
Yes. And at the end of the workday, you might say, Have a good evening. See you tomorrow. Have a great weekend. On Fridays.
And if someone has had a long day, you might say, "Hope you get some rest," or "Hope you can relax this evening."
These small, friendly interactions in English help you feel more connected to your colleagues and build a positive work environment.
Exactly. It all becomes part of using English in daily work life. So, to quickly recap today's episode, we've talked about many different ways people use English at work. We discussed writing emails, understanding reports, participating in meetings, sharing updates in daily stand-ups, having one-on-one meetings with your boss, and using English in casual conversations with colleagues.
Yes, and we really hope that the phrases and examples we shared today will help our listeners feel more confident when using English in their professional life. Remember, practice is the key. Don't be afraid to use English whenever you get the chance.
That's right. And don't worry about mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes when learning a new language. What matters most is that you keep practicing and keep improving step by step.
Exactly. And with that, we're coming to the end of today's episode. Thank you so much for spending your time with us here on Mr. Daily Speak English. We truly appreciate every single listener.
Yes, thank you, everyone. And before we say goodbye, we have one final request. If you enjoyed this episode and found it useful, please subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our future lessons.
And feel free to share this episode with friends or coworkers who are also learning English. The more people we can help, the better.
And we'd also love to hear from you in the comments below. Tell us, do you use English at work? Which phrases from today's lesson were most useful for you?
We read all of your comments and really appreciate your support and feedback. Thank you again for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you in our next episode.
Bye for now and have a wonderful day.
Take care, everyone.